Welcome. I'm Julie Bacon, and you're listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast, a podcast for dog handlers who are on a mission to achieve big goals. Here I share lessons, insights, personal stories, and tools you can apply during your next show, trial, or test to help you strengthen your mental game and hopefully cue more consistently. Be sure to check out the show notes where you'll find details about the episodes, plus important links, including the link to the Dogged Planner and Workbook created just for handlers on a mission. So if you're ready to improve your competitive mindset, get out of your own way, and connect with your dog like never before, then it's time to get comfy, bring an open mind, and work your mindset. Hey there, and welcome back to the podcast. Okay, this week we are talking about those runs, those trials, those events that feel really, really important, okay? And, you know, as much as we'd like to normalize runs and try to show up as the same person in trials as we are when we practice, or the same person at a national event as we are when we're in our backyard, the truth of the matter is there are some runs, some events, some trials that just really do matter more to us, okay? And they can be important from a whole bunch of reasons. You know, maybe it is a national event, or maybe there's an audience, or maybe your breeder came to watch today, or maybe you're just really, really want to finish that freaking title that you've been chasing for a while, okay? So when we do that, or like, you know, when you're on 19 and a half, right? The mock people know, when you're on run 19 and a half, right? Those are the moments where, you feel the pressure the most because you want it more, or because the outcome of it, or the thing at the end of the queue, that is waiting for you, glimmering and shiny and cute and fabulous with a big fancy ribbon, is just really desired. Okay. And so I have those runs, of course. I have those events, of course. Everybody does. But what I call this pattern, or what I call this kind of moment, and I do this a lot when we're coaching and working through this kind of stuff, is this concept of something being precious. Okay? Whether it's a run, a weekend, a national event, whatever, right? But something about it, I just call it precious. It's like you just want like my precious, right? So bad that you are willing to do anything for it. But what happens is we start to just focus on the outcome, right? When it's precious and it's one of a kind, or it's so important and it's important for a whole bunch of different reasons, now the outcome, the getting it, is the thing. It's the whole thing. It's the whole vibe. And even when I talk to people on the phone who are sort of in having a precious moment, if you will, you can hear it that I start to say, okay, well, great. Well, what are your process goals? And immediately they'll give me like one process goal, and then immediately they're like at the end of the run, right? So it's the thing that makes us rush, right? It's the thing that makes us rush to the end, picture the big ribbon on the dashboard driving home, like the whole 9 yards, okay? But the problem is not the desire. We all have desire. I would never kill desire. I probably wouldn't get out and train on a cold, windy day without the desire, right? Without the big event pulling me forward, okay? So we need the desire. We do. But the problem is actually what happens when a run becomes precious, right? Because that's when our mindset falls apart. That's when we sort of forget all of the things that we've done up until this point, maybe to get us to this point, and we just suddenly get lured by the shiny glow of the outcome, that it's really hard for us to get back in our process goals, or get back to executing on the things we know work to get us there. Okay. So what makes a run precious? Well, I could never give you an exhausted list. There's so many things that potentially make it precious, but a couple of themes I think do show up. And one is that it's a rare opportunity. Okay, that you are faced with something that doesn't happen every weekend. It's not something that you can do 8 times a year or even 20 times a year. It's something that maybe only happens a few times a year. Maybe it is a national event, something you qualified for. Maybe it is finishing a title, like a marathon title, that kind of stuff. But really, we think of it, it's a rare opportunity. Okay. And sometimes a rare opportunity is even like for me, I compete in draft, which is karting, also known as. And like we only have so many opportunities a year. Like some people who don't travel might only be able to do it like once or twice a year. So that would be a rare opportunity. And when you have rare opportunities, more weight is naturally put on the outcome because you might not get another chance for 6 months or so, or more, right? Who's to know? The second thing is the big meaning, right? The things that fall into this category of big meaning, like getting into the finals or qualifying for a big event or finishing that big title, especially a marathon title that you've been going for a long time. For me, once big meaning was bringing a dog back after a big long rehab after back surgery. So that run had big meaning to it. Okay. So it doesn't, and the other thing I want to say is it's big meaning to you. Okay. It's not big meaning to Facebook. It's not big meaning to your training partners. It's something that has big meaning to you. Okay. And then the third sort of bucket I put a lot of this stuff is it has some sort of emotional weight. There's some emotional, feeling about it. Like maybe it's a retirement run or, it's your last run and the dog's going to retire. Or, for me, I definitely feel like, because I, of course, happen to choose to fall in love with a breed that doesn't live that long, I sometimes feel the emotional weight of their age, and creeping up on me like I'm running out of time. And sometimes that can feel emotional, or it can just feel emotional because maybe they did come back from a rehab or, went through something. I mean, there was a lot of emotional weight when I ran my girl at the Agility Invitational one year, 8 weeks after bloat surgery, right? There was some emotional weight there, So like, again, those are just the big buckets, right? There we could go, I could spend days, making a list of things that make certain runs, events, or weekends more precious than others, all right? And so we want to normalize that this is a thing. Like all of us feel this way, but also to normalize how personal it is, because one person's normal weekend might be another person's or yours super precious weekend, super important weekend. Okay. If you've ever, done agility, for instance, the weekend of November 30th, when everybody's trying to qualify for nationals, the energy of the building is very different. Everybody's in very much precious mode, and it's very normal within that room to sort of be going for and finishing and needing, some really good outcomes. Okay. It's normal. It's normal. We want the outcomes. We're kind of in it for the outcomes. I mean, we love the journey, I hope. I mean, I do. I love the journey. I love training, but the outcomes are really quite nice. Okay. All right. So as we look at what makes something precious, it's kind of where that desire for something and the scarcity of it, in other words, the specialness of it, the uniqueness of it, comes together and gives you like this concept of compression, right? Because it's all coming in. That's what like pressure is, right? It's a compression. So you have a strong desire, you have a limited number of chances, a finite number of chances, and then so everything gets loaded onto or compressed onto this one run, this one weekend, this one national event. So then all of a sudden one run, it's hard to say fast, one run starts carrying the weight of the season, the dog's career, your story as a handler, what it means for you to be able to, compete under pressure, right? It's about the stories we tell. It's not factually what all that means, but it's about the stories we give that moment. So when everything is riding on one run, right? And we do that to ourselves, right? We put everything is riding on this one run. Well, then our mindset becomes fragile, okay? Because there's a lot of places where that can break, or I'll say falter. And so we really need to pay attention to that, okay? All right. So what preciousness does to performance? Well, it increases pressure, right? I mean, as soon as we make something precious. And by that, the other way I'll describe it sometimes is we're putting something up on a pedestal. Okay. And when we put something up on a pedestal, typically we end up below that. Okay. So we're pushing ourselves down. So we're making that thing like kind of way up there on this pedestal, like, oh my God, do I deserve it? It's so hard. It's getting harder. The more, and the more pressure we add, the kind of the taller the pedestal or the more unreachable that moment can feel. It's not necessarily true. It's, again, we are some great storytellers, what we want to be. And so the more we kind of get into that narration, or that narrative rather, the more that we kind of put it out of reach ourselves. It's kind of crazy. Okay. So anyway, when we're thinking about what it does to our performance, the pressure increases, our tolerance for risk drops, right? We'll make the safe choice in the ring, or we'll overhandle something, or we'll, maybe do something a little extra or train a little extra that we normally wouldn't, our adaptability shrinks, right? Because we're not as flexible. We're not as adaptive. We are less, going back to tolerance, but it's also adaptability. We have less patience for, the gate, putting one more run up in front of us or something, or moving that around, less tolerance for parking lots and, all of that stuff. We're just not very adaptable. We're not very flexible anymore. Okay. And then, of course, mistakes feel catastrophic, right? They just feel, we get very dramatic, don't we? The mistakes are catastrophic. A mistake that might not bother us on another day or kind of bum us out, or at home would be like nothing, like no big deal, suddenly are like world ending. We just get very catastrophic and dramatic. And then finally, adding that all together, really, it's our confidence that suffers, right? Our confidence gets really brittle. And I like brittle as a word. First of all, it's a good word, but also because that is how it feels to me, right? That like if anything goes wrong, my confidence might snap, And so I think that's kind of what we feel. And then we get worried that our confidence is going to break. And then we start to get worried about that. So we start to get wrapped around the axle, if you will. And then it just keeps snowballing. Just throw as many metaphors as possible in there. Okay. And then, when we walk into the ring, we're doing our runs more defensively, right? We're more protective of our run instead of just really driving forward with confidence. We're going hesitantly into our, left turn, our right, our about turns, etc., instead of just driving right through them and trusting our dogs to do those turns, for instance, right? That we start managing things, overhandling, instead of trusting our dog, trusting ourselves, trusting our training. Trust basically goes out the window sometimes in these moments. And then finally, of course, we're reactive instead of responsive. We're just reacting to things that happen, sometimes overreacting, instead of responding and sort of taking that pause and, regulating. If you're in the membership, we are all about regulation all month. And so instead of taking that pause, using that gap in the moment to regulate and really think through it and figure out how we want to respond, we're just in reaction mode. And it's not just about nerves. I think that people in this moment think, big event, I get nervous, right? Finals, I choke. My breeder comes to watch, I always mess up, okay? And so they equate those things because there is an event and then there is an outcome, and they draw a big fat Sharpie line between the two. But it really isn't about the nerves. It's about the overloaded meaning you have given that run or that weekend or that event, okay? It's about how you've loaded it up like a overloaded baked potato. I don't know why I just thought of that, but it's like you just overloaded it basically and put all of this meaning and all of this have to, must, should, stuff onto it. And now it's no wonder you can't figure out how to even tie your shoes, much less get to the ring. Okay. So let's talk about how to fix this, obviously, right when we come back. If you love this podcast, you'll love the Q membership. Each month, we tackle topics like ring nerves, confidence, and mental toughness, breaking them down into bite-sized, actionable lessons. You'll also get a private Facebook group for support and access to all of my online courses. It's like having a mindset coach in your pocket. Ready to get started? Join us. The link is in the show notes or head to theqcoach.com. Back to the episode. Okay, there's one more belief that I want to tackle before we go into the fix, and that is understanding that there's kind of some faulty belief under these precious runs, right? I mean, just the fact that we've called them precious or made them more important than any other run is a little dubious to begin with, right? Because on the one hand, I get it. I've been there. I've, wanted, to finish that title. I've wanted to do well at my national. Like, there are runs that kind of mean more to me, that I care more about, okay? But there's some faulty beliefs, though, underneath that we need to excavate. And one of them would be, for instance, I'll just put it in just phrase it in a sentence, so if this matters more, then I need it to go well, or if I want it badly enough, I'll rise to the occasion, or this is my shot, my one shot, it's all I get, kind of a thing, right? So those are actually beliefs. Like, if you probably hear yourself saying them, or you hear me saying them, and you're like, I don't see what the problem is. Okay. But the thing is you're tying these belief systems again to what the run means. And we don't really have to take high stakes, like a high stakes situation or something that really means to us, and add more pressure. That's something we're doing. Okay, we're doing that. And yeah, if you're at some national event and ESPN is set up in the corner, then yeah, there's some optical things or some environmental things that are clues that tell your system that it is a bigger deal. But at the end of the day, we all just have to run our dogs the best we can. In whatever venue that is, we just have to run our dogs the best we can. So we don't have to apply more pressure to these situations. They don't require more pressure. What they require, what every big moment requires from us, is clearer thinking. If anything, it requires us to get so clear that we can simplify. Too often, we take into the ring in these big moments 12 things we got to do to execute. Right? Oh my God, I got to do this, and I got to do this, and I got to do this, and this has to be perfect, and this has to be perfect, right? Well, no wonder we fail, and no wonder our dog's looking at us like we are crazier than usual, okay? So we have to get clear. We have to simplify. And this is where the growth mindset lives, right? We think that learning has to work only when we feel safe. That's not true. Okay. But learning works a lot better when you feel safe. So we have to get ourselves again regulated and into that regulated and safe feeling, and realize that we are not being threatened, that even though this sort of precious moment, again, it makes me giggle when I say that, but even though this sort of precious moment it feels like it's threatening our identity, because what if we fail? Who will we be if we fail in this moment? And that's why we feel vulnerable and we feel kind of threatened, basically, because we've put so much on the line. It's like we pushed all the chips into the middle of the table, and if we lose, we go home, homeless, and someone's taking away our dog at the door, right? Which is not true. Okay. But I get the feeling around it. So let's figure out how we get clear and how we simplify. All right. So we get to want it badly. Again, I'm not taking that away. I have a list of things that I want really badly. Some of them are written down. Some of them are just for me. Okay. So we want to break apart this idea that if you care, it means you're clinging. No, you can care about something without gripping, without clinging. Okay. You can desire something without having this overwhelming sort of urgent feeling, like, oh my God, I have to do it right now. Like that clenched teeth sort of urgent feeling. And something can be important to you without the outcome being like a verdict or a statement on who you are and how much you're valued and what you mean to the world. Okay. So runs are just runs. They're not proof of anything. Okay. We add up a bunch of runs to get some titles and get some things and get some stuff and some accolades and some letters to put on the backs and fronts of names and to post on Facebook in the morning, but they're not proof of that, right? Plenty of nice dogs, plenty of nice runs, plenty of great handlers, aren't having pictures on the podium. Okay. So I don't want you to care any less or want any less, or necessarily just keep entering more trials. Okay. I just want you to understand that one run does not define everything. Okay. So where have you, think about right now as we're talking through this, where have you made a run precious? And like why? And what did you put on it? And how did you feel? Okay. I can think of 12 at least without even trying. Okay. One event I made so precious, as I've told you many times before, I gave myself a migraine before I walked in the ring. You can fill in the blank on how well that went because, and hint, when I'm starting to get a migraine, I lose sight on my right side. Okay. So you can fill in the blanks. It's fine. But where have you made something precious and how did that go? And how did you feel about it? And how did you work through it? Okay. Because it's worth mining that. It's worth spending a minute figuring that out. Because what you want to be able to do is diffuse that moment, pull it apart, get some clarity, write it down if you have to, write down a list of things that you feel are adding pressure to the moment and why you think that's happening. Is it time? Is it there's something emotional about it? Is there something special or scarce about the opportunity? Where is that coming from for you? And as soon as you see it on paper, you will be able to think more clearly because you'll have that visibility about what the origin is of what's making this precious. And then the other thing you get to ask in that moment is it true? Okay. And a lot of times the answer is yes. Okay. Yes, I might not ever get back to, Florida. Yes, this dog is retiring. Like this is real. This is my last run before I retire this dog, or, yes, this is my dog's, it is facts that this is my dog's first run back since surgery. Okay. So those are facts, but sometimes you will have another chance. You will have another weekend to finish the title. There will be another opportunity. Okay. So it's not always, the answer isn't always like scarcity. Okay. Sometimes the answer is, no, this is just pressure I'm putting on myself. I know I'll get this eventually. It's just math at this point. Or, I do have another chance next weekend. It's not the end of the world. So we have to get a little more honest about ourselves and frankly, rip our own stories apart and see where we're sort of over dramatizing and where we are being truthful. And for those runs where you get down to it and you're like, no, like this is it. This is like my one shot. This is all I get. This is it. Then we have to sit down and think like, okay, how did I get here? What are the tools that I used to get here? Can I trust my skills? Can I trust my training? Can I trust my partnership? Can I lean on the things that got us this far to take us the rest of the way? How can I simplify my run plan? How can I, focus on my process goals, focus on connection, get back to basics so that I can walk in without all of this baggage and added pressure so that I give myself the space to think, to execute, to connect with my dogs, to do what we came here to do. Okay. It's the overloading of these things. When it's not the desire, it's the overloading of the moment that we just keep piling on layer after, it's like pressure's a paint and we just keep putting it on thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker. And then we get stuck in that mental loop. So you also need to figure out a way to break yourself out of that mental loop and that rethinking. There's a statistic somewhere, somebody smart shared once, that we really only have a thought for around 17 seconds. And I think there's, varying degrees on that or varying answers on the specific number of seconds. But regardless, it's a very short amount of time. So if we're sitting there thinking about something for an hour, it's because we're reinvesting in the thought. We're essentially hitting replay. We've got a 17-second thought on repeat. And when it gets to 17, it just starts again at 1, starts again at 1. 1 through 17 starts again at 1. So we are reinvesting in that thought every 17 seconds. We're choosing to say, yes, I want to keep thinking about this, basically. Okay. So we need to choose different thoughts and we need to mind our mindset and we need to be really interfering with those kinds of loops so that we can get ourselves out of them. Okay? So I want to leave you with the reminder that wanting something so badly does not make you fragile. It does not strip away your confidence. It is not a jinx. Okay? It is none of those things. It is normal. It is what pulls us forward, right? Because wanting things, gets us going outside when it's cold and windy or whatever, right? To train. All right. But also one run is not going to make or break your life and who you are as a person and who you are as a trainer and your dog and everything. Okay. So we want to, again, get regulated, get real about what this really is and what the weight of this run or the weekend or event is carrying, and figure out how we can strip it back so that we are able to let go of some of the emotional pieces so that we can execute as well as we know we can. All right. Because you didn't make it that far without a whole bunch of skills, experience, and connection with your dog and fabulous teamwork. Okay. So I hope that helps. I would be curious to know how often you think you catch yourself sort of making something precious or putting something up on a pedestal and then putting yourself lower. So just use that sort of lens when you get nervous, especially, or when you feel like you're sort of bunching up on the pressure, sort of layering on the layers, if you will. Okay. All right. Let me know how that goes. All right. And in the meantime, I hope whatever you're up to this week, I hope you have a fantastic time with your dogs. Thanks so much for listening to the Mindset Coaching for Handlers podcast with me, Julie Bacon. I am so grateful for your precious time. Check out my Dogged Planner workbook and journal available on Amazon. Just search for Dogged Planner. I also offer monthly membership that's perfect for ongoing support of your awesome goals. Check out theqcoach.com for details, or just stop by and check out all the ways you can work on your mindset. And be sure to follow me on Facebook and Instagram at theqcoach and let me know how it's going. Finally, please share, subscribe, and leave a review. This helps us podcasters tremendously. Plus, I know I get my best podcast recommendations from friends. Thanks, and have a great week with your dogs.